Okay, well, thank you so much for being here to celebrate 15 years with me. There's some new faces I met tonight and some familiar ones, so that's always a nice thing for readings. And the press, of course, 15 years, I can't believe it. And we have published over 200 books. And so far this year, 13 books. And I have many more to come out this year. So I'm really excited about it. Thanks. and so a lot of work, but I'm very happy and I love it. I love bringing out writers' work, into the world. So the press does many things. We're very active. We have a regular reading series, poetry and translation roundtables, a poetry and artist series, pastry with poets workshops, the Lost Bookshelf bookstore, and Read America Read. So as you can see, we all are very busy with the press. Our first reader is David Blair, and I have known David for quite a while now, and he's in Somerville too, yay! And Sabrina. So David is the author of 4 books of poetry, and Mad Hat Press published his collection of essays last year called Essays About Poetry and Place. And I give you David.
Oh, thank you, Gloria.
Thank
Good to
you.
see everybody. Wonderful. So I'm going to read, here's a poem that just came out in New American Writing. And it's set up a couple of different days at the beach last summer. And it's for Jim Dunn, who lives up on the North Shore. He's a poet I really love and love to hang out with him. So Cape Ann Existential Medley. How did the rabbits get on the island between the beach and the lighthouse? An eagle picked one up, and an eagle picked another one up, and they got rabbity. Senior day at the beach makes old cynics laugh at the beach-length tackle football game goons. Me too. I like when the quieter receiver among these other kids like pails of milk in the shade of cows tackles the loudmouth on the same tee, no rules, who threw a hard-pointed pass at a beefy back, bawap, hard, turkey head to chicken head called, picked up some sea lettuce and stretch it without tearing it, and small goobers of wet sand sink down and holes open up in a cosmic way. Drop that green hanky to save a baby periwinkle snail. Girls, boys, young people, tie-dye shirts say you are seniors. Lonely are the brains, but snug the joiners. Listen to a kid whose friends thought he would drown, bust lifeguard chops. Kid could move somewhere nasty, get elected to Congress, creep. I know who has the New York City Fire Department sticker on his one ridiculous Jeep to toddle along Cape Ann. And the days get even longer, yes to that. Another day hotter inland. The noon beach sits in the bouquet of rising mists from the cool pools, the sand, the waves. The neighborhood turns Irish or Greek, rocky, a hill rising up across an inlet from a hill that rises up about the same height. The ice age seems palpable. I want a big rock in my yard too. The garbage men watch the girls walk in flip-flops and towel sarongs along daylily blacktop. The possibility for laziness the world hides in the suburban shore. And then a beach bend empties, clean, a mussel shell sticking out of the stand like the car on the cover of Neil Young's album. Dune roses mixed in the dune grass if you walk the hottest sand, shredded cotton clouds on the horizon with a pale smile like a blue melon. Heaven when the tide goes out along the inlet. The cool sandy muck decompresses downwards with increasing buoyancy. No wonder shorebirds walk funny. Housing by the sea. Fact is, the more we go around, the more we can focus, as if alone. Well, so I'd never read that one. Here's another kind of beach poem. I'm going to go to the beach on Tuesday. Early July at Fogland Beach. All fog tastes like flat moxie in cloudless July heat, but the fog rolls later on, more and more of it as the months turn, white enveloping the cold plant drums up the Sakonnet River. But on the marsh side, that hot, bright day, down a sand road through high weeds edging to Spartina from the parking lot to pickup trucks, we met some people been here for years. Fishers, quahoggers, beer can drinkers, smokers under tents in the tar and cocoa smell of water. Gaunt eyes, no music, no sports, no target shooting, no salad dressing, no wasabi peas, no battlefield earthworks worth trouble, no beagles, no ticks, no blood clots, no grilled chicken breast in warm mayo, no lettuce, no politics, no shittiness. Our feet on the stones and broken whelk shells with bone curves like amphora necks or wine bottle necks, the low tide mud, a gleam of pearled black snails the size of the marbles you would not miss if you lost them, and you went home with a lighter leather sack also containing sea glass. Inexplicably, a poker chip, a white one, red clay in its scallop grooves. There was a jellyfish in the faded sand pail from kids with a net like a thought bubble the size of maybe a coin. Look, kid, a hermit crab. The earthy swallows flew down from the hill away from our names as we grilled and steamed ourselves on the stony margin hibachi. Past banked maples, a pasture climbed toward apple trees and a barn with wheels of hay bigger than truck wheels. Identify with egrets too and their long calm beaks if things seem really jaggy and clear on these banks, because maybe they get odder and odder and older. I'm going to read the sequence in this book. It's called, for my friend, most of this couple of poems I wrote in this book, Barbarian Seasons, which came out with Mad Hat, end of February. I wrote in 2015, but most of the book I started writing during the 2016 election. And the sequences I really started in the kind of period between, the election and the inauguration. In the middle of all that, my great friend from college, who was my roommate, freshman and senior year, died. And I loved this guy, Jim Keeley. So I wrote a poem. I wrote two poems from him. This is kind of a short sequence of like prose poems. And I tried to get like his character's voice into the poem and kinds of things that he cared about and liked and thought. And you could really, when somebody dies, a lot of times you get their voice in your head. And so some of that is in his voice. And then he loved his friends. He was crazy about his friends and his family and his high school friends. So I put some of my high school friends in the poem, though they weren't his friends. And I tried to kind of evoke the way, young guys bust each other's chops. Short time for James Keeley. 1. Forget the piety and pious responses, because if you write an elegy long enough, it becomes another way to say hello somehow until you collapse on the couch in your clothes. The Chinese restaurant on the corner was called Nice Food. For years it was like this. We never fought once. We just stood there talking, and then one of us would fall over. That was what life was like. And she was all going around the room, waving her hands, maybe conducting stuff. To me, she was like some Glinda the Good Witch. And then if one of us fell over, the other was not even looking away, just watching. Bright. Sometimes you can catch somebody tumbling, and sometimes you don't. The both of us smelled like her wings there, pleasant, with its pure water, with its pee, hard work, and flying. Army brats. John Floyd, the cold January day, was hatless and pink-faced, wearing his glasses with thick lenses and fog on them. His down jacket, or sometimes just a vest, was hand-me-down from Ted, his ornithologist brother, and may have been hand-me-down before that. All the John Floyds were like that. I mean, all the Army brats were. Big family. Where is this place? In Virginia? Now that was moonlight walking and remembering the organization of books and their details and feelings. First Jim died, then the cat died, then another pal spends 5 weeks with some tubes up his nose, and he still lives. Famous people, on the other hand, give everybody such a ball when they die. Why I'm not a vegan. Most cows like to be milked. Some animals are really dull as Canada geese who nip on the median. The years go by too quickly when I visit my aunt and uncle for coffee, my silver-haired aunt and uncle. Sandwich time. We all torture each other around the kitchen table. The mayo, the mustard, the fathers and sons, the moms, the cousins, but the underhanded subtext of meanness and competition only flares up for a moment, one note among many notes flying back and forth while the orchestra tunes up beneath the seats. Look, my friend says, I'm in heaven. I'm sorry for your tears. Some of them are for me, and I appreciate. Thank you. That's love. But some of them, let's face it, are for you. So try not to be stupid now and then go let love lead to hatred. Eat some cheese. It's not a kidney. Sabrina, you're gonna have to go move my car for Michelle. The early romantics did not have such nice shoes. They were like flats, and if some wore boots, they were sort of pigeon deals. They would go walking out in the winter nights of torchlit university towns, especially if the snow was blue, and then look at those cobblestones going down, or that hard icy curb between the curb and the cobblestones. These shoes have got to get with it. The future, this walking here will just about kill me if I don't really concentrate where I put my feet. Oh shit. Okay. And then I got another sequence in here called Big Family Poems. 1. Wanted poster. And all that blab and pork chop and love and hate, we need solitude and silence too. 2. Waiting for the Boston's Women's March. Bad dynamic. He thinks, young pelican, I feed you fish, and you go out in the night with that big red hair. He stands with his glass of wine in the dining room, trying to get as much of his ass as possible over the heat register in the corner. Midnight, every night, the guy in his hoodie throws a spitty tennis ball to his German shepherd. Bad translation. They kept reading it, like watching Kung Fu again. Academic somehow, hardly flowing. He thought he might go to a conservative political rally and wave a skewer of uncooked spam above his head. What else could go wrong? For 5 days, they wore the same brown corduroy pants. Ridges were flattening out with supplicant creases in a few odd places. Mr. Abano knocked at the tenant's door on the ground floor. Jiggle the handle. Fig tree wrapped out back, cut out in the pavement before the fence. Even though he was safe in 1978, the late first baseman touched the runner's knee with his glove, laughing together, both of them, in May, afternoon game. The entire kitchen and sushi bar staff napped in the dining room for an hour between lunch and dinner hours. Still in kitchen whites, she stood on the giant river blocks casting for big river carp while a garbage barge pushed in one direction and a coal train rolled at her back. Domingo sang while tipping all manner of shells into an illegal hole in the floor to float away with the tide, the same tide that shook the chandelier's reflections. The dumpster guys were very polite about making the waiter, cook, and dishwasher stay open until 3 a.m., left a century note. She goes on up that hill to see her girlfriend, pounding it on up that hill in her big winter coat with fur up all around her hood, hero of Telemark, badass tonight. The dancer in a leather jacket had gotten herself a crew cut that day, and Victor was ready to recite poems from 20 love poems and a song of despair. To him, the human morning smells healthy at the zoo, maybe straw, maybe mung bean noodles while they soak. The sidewalk, all that wide expanse along the black iron bars of the Little Sisters of the Poor, then bump, bump, bump. Plenty of ice on the sidewalk after that, then whomp. Wearing socks, she told the cold floor register grate that was how it was going to be for the whole country. After the show, he says he also raps and almost jumped up there himself, wearing construction boots from work and a vest with a lot of practical pockets. Midnight, water's running. The guy in his hoodie throws a spitty tennis ball to his German shepherd next to big piles of plowed snow. It was a warm night in winter. The young people under 30 are all acting frisky as can be. They found each other. By winter's end, we can all turn to stuffed dolls made of yarn. Some lean, rich people have short-cropped gray hair and play squash and run on treadmills in finished or archaic basements by stony foundations in damp earth. Good Lord, I've got the willies, Rambo thinks, fingering a phantom crawl in his head. Lice. The barbarians knew that the use of jargon was an expression of shame, but used jargon by the curb and the woods. Being loved and being loved, she reached for her love and thought, let me hold that one. She lost a whole band of ideas for a moment or more. They were righteous, too. The first steps in a new land. Next section is, hell, I'll read it. Endurance of the absurd. One time, two sisters, nuns actually, in an awful tennis joke about God and cursing, not based on me and my baby brother like Shoney's big boy, were road tripping and smoking cigarettes, and the one not driving kept burping up Diet Coke. And the brother driving me got really freaked out and grouchy and said, hey there, fuck, sewer breath, with the decomposition of household waste and cleaning supplies wrapped around this corner by the Cambridge line by the monument place selling headstone angels. If I did not find you remotely sympathetic, I would not locate the salt of the sea and breakdown of aquatic plants and all manner of sea life on the waft of the cargo tankers into the harbor, nor the silo grains, silver's grain silos and panoramas of livestock left to roam north of the Red River, along past the mountains, time present, time past, of turnpikes into corn, jet fuel in the accordion to the U.S. air flight in the rain to the cloud belt in its sulfurous steel mill early morning drizzle, reaching the houses on the hilltop by desert prairie, stone by the river, coffee and bacon, the locust trees, the cherry tomato plants with 2 cherry tomatoes, the first 2 of the year, and that old lady, our great aunt, gone down to the bushes to find our morning newspaper with this sort of stuff. Damn, open the window, said Sister Mary Elephant, which of course is a Cheech and Chong routine. Okay, here's the last part of the poem, the last one I'm gonna read. What I believe again, that Walden Pond now, in my heart, Walt Whitman's mind, Gerard Manley Hopkins. A girl micro pens hand-colored cartoon razor panels into her diary, fine hands dialogue bubbles and her prose narration while some guys blast Donald Vincent's new album, his flow from a boombox far away enough to sound only nearby coastal undulations. The highway turn the color of nicotine stains, the lateral roads and the overpass streets, rustier by bridges, festooned with flags all over again. Summer roads too narrow for trucks come to the pond, even some long-fingered bossa nova guitar chords, a friendship picnic up around the lifeguard-free bend, 2 old guys in ball caps, such old shits with outboard tilted up and boat high in water lines out. Golf shirts can feel my own shorts crawling about the same age about as a Chinese couple emerged from spontaneous dip in the water. The lady soaked and laughing in a dress maybe come from a Baptist church feeling renewed, amused, screw rules go this way. His slacks knotted to shorts. All smart people come here. I believe a lady who ladles out bean soup from her zinc pot here. Kinder, thriftier, work smart, family love people with enemies. I see a guy read what Maisie knew. I see a lady with moles read an academic journal with small print graphs and 2 columns per page. I see a couple perform retina scan and thigh exchange in supple leopard print trunks, though I can't tell whose ass went with whose arms. Pure circus. I see some rashes and dry skin and peppermint patterned belly meat, all gender-fi, because we have to sit in so many clammy places like Somerville buses. It is a good place for the nerdy to swing far out here, the law students speaking with their transitions and paragraphs, and the goof who interrupts the flow of mutual discourse to say, wow, 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 as his partner steps from her dress towards the water. But hey, man, you get too shady in my poem. Come on. We all think about bacteria, microscopic life, the large and the small, as the pinecone pollen swirls its golden starry shapes on the waters, and the pond will be closed next week on account of algae from piss. I believe everybody here, wicked pissers, the babies especially. Thank you for listening to me. And
Woo!
Thank you, David. And did Afia come in at all?
I don't know.
I guess not. So I just thought I'd say her name in case she was here.
I didn't
Okay.
see it, Gloria.
So our next reader is Donald Vincent. And I hope you're okay with all the fires in California. Oh my gosh. So he is a poet, educator, and musician. His book, Convenient Amnesia, was just released in July by Broadstone Books. And I give you Donald.
Thank you. I am just so amazed at David's last poem And I'm gonna tell you why poetry is very trippy. And I'm just like having a so surreal experience. So I was sitting here thinking about what poems I should read. And I said, let me go with the New England vibe since, it's only right. And for a second, I was gonna read this one poem who, she was the muse for at least two of the poems in my book. Her mother wrote a movie by the name of What Maisie Knew, which is based off of the book that was mentioned in David's poem. And David also mentioned me by name in that poem. And so I'm just like, wow, poetry is very circuitous and it's just one big happy family. So I'm not gonna go the New England route though. I think I'm going to read some poems from my book that were inspired by my travels to Paris. So this first poem is the first published poem of mine ever. And it's an ekphrastic poem about a piece of artwork titled Dance Class at the Opera by Edgar Degas. This is titled Dear Lady Ballet Monet. Corps du ballet. On our floor, we are all equal, bodies bending bullishly across the earth. We'd rather strive than resist the temptation of leisure. PK, pricked position on point, balancing on the ball of our feet, arms flow outward, prep for flight. We winged dancers aim to land on stars with half-crescent smiles. Ponche, leaning into the love of life and dance, I embrace my own dearest onlooker, a leg, a mist in thin air, a freezing stare, capturing every second of silence. Pirouette, limbs twirl, dizzying and distorting reality, whirling and ready for the grand jeté with subtle stealth, precise movements in real time. Sickling, none refrain from the fall of youth. Aging bones begin to succumb to the pressures of an incorrect step and posture. Rhythmic moves fading into an abyss of nostalgic dreams. So this next poem was inspired by a Parisian friend. I was at my first opera. This is connecting it back to the dance class at the opera. Edgar Degas. You'll take this trip with me, y'all, I promise. So I went to Paris and I come back to New York City. I meet with a friend and we're at the opera. I forget what opera it was. First time going to an opera, the language and all of that, good times. And she says, we're waiting for another friend to come. And this, I guess I would say angel, that's cliche, but an angel just happens to walk down the steps of the opera. And it just so happens that that was the friend. And we got to hang out. It's a good time. This poem is titled Poet's Portrait of Marie C. Unforgettable from your first steps in the halls of the opera's auditorium in your pine-berry blue khaki jacket over a perfectly striped button-up. Collared Oxford shirt with unbuttoned cuffs. I've only seen preppy rock stars pull off. Screaming, fuck me in the most effortlessly ways possible, somewhere between Struggle Fest and jet lag from this year's Cannes Film Festival. Could this be love at first swoon? Colorless, soft eyes, sweet as macaroons, enchanting like a moon when full. Are they gray, sky blue, perfection's hue? It is sexy yet weird to tell a stranger you've seen them in a dream, other dream, unless it becomes true. This next poem was written on La Seine, the river in Paris. I've always studied French culture, one of those Francophile folks. So going to Paris was a surreal experience. I got to be like a superstar for a couple weeks. This is titled La Seine. Such a serene scene, the tourists wave pedantically from boats at me with sticks to selfie, smiles, and video cameras. The nearby school children puff cigarettes for the first time. I want to write this poem in French because I am in France. La fille de mon rêve understands. She is the muse, the calmness of the waves, a gentle tide moving me through the city of amour. La scene is two rivers actually, flowing with bridges only made for feet, as I walk my way into the music of the moonlight. Now, while I was also on this river, there was a little, statue that was very reminiscent of the Statue of Liberty. And someone said, you know what? The French gave the Statue of Liberty to the United States as a gift for freeing the slaves. Take this trip with me, y'all. Visited Edgar Degas' grave at Montmartre Cemetery. It was a very good time. I met this old woman who fed cats in the morning. I got to smoke reefer without people walking around. And while I was in the cemetery, I just thought about all the life that surrounded me. This poem is titled Recess at Montmartre Cemetery. Life bustles on the outskirts of flare tombs. Decadent homes for the dead are heirlooms. The school children at recess jest and wail as the 81-year-old groundkeeper steps over snails, feeding cats bread that's stale. Searching for Degas' resting place, the reaper's success is found in an acropolis. Shells of roses and ceremoniously feeding of grapes. My bones thrive and jive along the trails. The bodies of France's most famous names rustle in the winds, blowing cannabis smoke. Death makes us feel alive in orgasmic hopes. I'm a stickler for last lines. I really like music, but I like, the theory behind language. Death makes us feel alive. This idea that, on the brink of death, you really feel the most alive. And in French, orgasm and orgasmic host, orgasm is called la petite mort, the little death. So, just sex in the cemetery is interesting these days, I guess. I don't know. Good times. So I'm going to move on to the opening poem. And then I have a sequence. I'll read a few poems from my sequence poem and then listen to the next reader. But this poem is titled Lucky Charm. I'm originally from Washington, D.C., everybody. I grew up in a place that is called a book desert because there is a lack of access to books. And they call it the chocolate city. So, 97% of my community were African American. When I went to Boston, it felt like the complete opposite. So this is the first poem I wrote in Boston. It's called Lucky Charm. I inherited the bop in my walk from my great-great-grandpa's lashings on the farm. So in Whole Foods, I divide aisles, a modern Moses parting white seas. You've been warned by my charm. I crush words like Godzilla. False alarm, keep calm for I won't cause harm. People scramble to dodge me, the monster with the third arm. On trains, they sneak peeks. Look away and look again at my charm, which is like Uncle Tom, too uncool to take home to mom. So in cars, clubs, and in bathrooms, we get it on because of my charm. Hello. You remind me of a fellow by the name of Othello, and if loving you is right, I've been wrong all along, charm. To take me by the hand because you want to dance, charm. Others clear throats on elevators. Then, are you an entertainer's? Questions swarm while quickly clutching their pocketbooks. I smile when they look and give them a buck for the hell of it, charm. The once you've been charmed, you never go back, charm. Staying true to my native land, but love to slang the English language, charm. February 1st should be Give a Thug a Hug Day, sipping Hennessy and Remy Martin, charm. Prankster and intelligent gangster all in one, no 40 acres and a mule, but it's all good. I still think we should occupy the hood, charm. Don't stop with the boogie down hip hop music in your McDonald's commercial, charm. The militant yet guilty until proven innocent, so shh, be quiet. Can't snitch about my kind of charm. The ones who know won't tell, and the ones who tell don't know. Can't look away from it like a soap opera. All my children raised themselves, charm. You knew about it, but forgot like last week's newspaper headline. I want to whistle whimsical feelings to white women. Emmett Till's charm. The charm that shines is the charm that blinds. So I really enjoy writing poetry. It took me a bit to write rhyme poetry. I started off writing rhyme poetry, but I hated it because so many people said it was music. And if you look at my poems on the page, you can see that there's a lot of formula. There's a lot of form that's built into a lot of my work. I really pay homage to, you know, those Eliot type of folks, all the modern poets. But this poem is something that I was working on for a while, ever since March. So this is my quarantine work. Some of this has been published on the Coachella Review. The title of the sequence piece that I'm going to read a few from is titled Zoom Funeral, or Is It the News? So I'm a professor at UCLA and Emerson College, LA's campus, and my students just say they are dying on Zoom. You know, they're on Zoom for 5 to 6 hours a day. And so I was just like, Zoom funeral, that's cool. I'm gonna use that in a poem. So this is titled Zoom Funeral, or Is It the News? Oh yeah, I had to wait for Deborah to sit down so she could get comfortable with this. Cool. You are on mute, nestled in front of the computer screen, filled with boxes of blank ivory faces. This is the usual though. You present on alternative assessments for students during a pandemic. Nonchalantly, you say, I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable, but traditional grading is a form of colonization and white supremacy. She privately messages you that she is not offended, but how is the grading system related to white supremacy? You tell yourself you knew you shouldn't have said anything, that people don't want the truth, but prefer to live in a fantasy world of disillusionment. Either way, you email her links on pedagogy and approaches to teach an English composition to international and multicultural students. And because you're always the lone token representative for Blackness, you're scheduled to fight the power and discuss those equity inclusion essays and articles constantly doing the work for whiteness. The pandemic is killing Black people. The police are still at it too. So you say fuck it and break the stay-at-home orders to visit a friend to disappear from the madness. Her love language is food, and it is so comforting you forget about the burden that Blackness carries in the world, at least for a second, luckily for a minute or more. At 7:05, a wireless emergency alert blares from the cell phone. The city of Los Angeles is declaring a curfew at 8 p.m. because of protests. Your friend says you can stay the night at her home. She wants you to be safe. For a second, you think about it, but you remember you have work to prepare for, even though it's a Saturday. However, you consider staying, and your non-Black partner is less frightened. As dinner is being plated, you hear a familiar chirp, chirp. The neighbors above peek over the balcony and quickly dip away. Your Blackness reminds them to lock their doors, even if in a secured and gated complex. He calls you to check in and make sure you're safe. Thanks you for watching the Hidden Figures movie with his kids, because their mother and stepdad blind them to the color and obstacle Blackness faces. You say no problem, but are hesitant to hang up the phone. But you're tired of these calls at this point. Bet you're happy you aren't working for the man anymore, he says. You concur. When he asks you how you're holding up, you say you're grateful to still be employed and still teaching. He asks where. When you tell him, he says, you're so articulate, and you can't help but to feel helpless, so you hang up. I used to work for the Federal Emergency Management Agency in the Department of Homeland Security. I started to see how my work was making its way into the real world when Trump became my boss. So my ultimate form of protest was saying, fuck all the benefits that a government job provides. I no longer want to work for this man. And so I left. And now I'm professing and teaching and all that good stuff. Oh, continuing. This is one of my favorite from the sequence. You are driving down the highway. Cop cars are in a single file line at the exit. It is your birthday. Your grandmother calls you to check in. The president of the news made her forget that it's your birthday. But she's your grandmother, so you shoot the shit. She says, did you see that white woman calling the police on the Black man watching birds? She got what was coming to her. You can't be caught on camera Caucasianing and being racist. You giggle and say, yeah, but that situation could have went left. Like you've seen so many times that the sensation is desensitized. She says, thank God that he stepped in and helped that man. And you say, but where was God when a cop killed a man by kneeling on his neck? She asks, well, what did he do? And you said nothing, but take it back because he did do something. You tell her it was an incident of BWB, breathing while black. Ask her again, where was God? She says, I don't know. I have the faintest idea. I'll have to look up what the scripture says. This is the last one that I'll be reading from the sequence. You check in with your friend, mostly because he doesn't believe in violent protests. He gloats, tells you he went to protest in his small local town outside of Boston. His family wouldn't let him go to the one in Boston. You're kind of glad he didn't go to the one in Boston. He tells you if he's asked how many black friends he has, he already has his response ready. He'll say, let me know if you want to see my ghetto resume. And you want to drown. Maybe pinch yourself. Are you dreaming? This doesn't seem real, but the future equity is on the horizon. If they stop killing you, will job discrimination stop too? Housing discrimination? Access to resources become available? Breaking. Another black body dies at the hands of the people who make an oath and swear to protect. Thank you. My name is Donald Vincent. I also go by Mr. Hip. I hosted a poetry reading in Boston. Mr. Hip presents reading series for 4 years. If you haven't got convenient amnesia, you can reach out to me at Hi Donald Vincent. I'd love to send you a signed copy with a very special encryption. Thank you all for joining this poetry reading. Thank you all for providing the platform today. Happy 15th anniversary. I think it's amazing to be publishing poetry for that long and still being dedicated to the work. Gloria, thank you. And again, thank y'all for listening to me, and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Donald. Our next reader is Marc Vincenz, and I've known Marc for a long time, and he is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press. He's the author of numerous books, and in 2016, Červená Barva Press published his translation of Secret Letter by Erica Bernhardt. And here's that book. And I give you Marc.
Thank you, Gloria. Yeah, so I'm first going to read a few of Erica's poems. It's been a while since I've read these. I had to kind of refamiliarize myself. I actually came across, when I lived in Iceland about 10 years ago, I was rummaging through the main library in Iceland and, looking for some poetry books, as you do in the Icelandic library. And I stumbled across these German books by this author called Erica Burkhardt. I subsequently found out she was Swiss, which I am too. I'm half Swiss and half English. And yeah, so I just started, on a whim translating her. And I got in touch with the Swiss Arts Council to try and get the rights to publish individual poems and things like that. And the Swiss Arts Council said, well, would you like to do a book? And I said, I'd love to do a book. And they said, well, we'll pay you $2,000 to do it. So there started my adventure in Erica Burkhardt. But I subsequently went to Switzerland from Iceland on several trips. And I visited, Erica had already passed away by that time, but I visited her soulmate, Ernst Halter, also a poet and a writer, although not of as big a renown as Erica. And we spent many days in their castle, which at one stage had been Erica's family's inn in this small rural village in Switzerland. So Erica has been compared to the likes of Ingeborg Bachmann, Fredrika Mayröcker, and Rilke. During the latter half of her lifetime, the Swiss literary establishment perceived her not only as the grande dame of German-Swiss poetry, but also as an elusive, metaphysical, and at times eccentric enigma of contemporary German language literature. She was born in Aarau in Switzerland, and she published over 24 collections of poetry and 9 prose works in her lifetime, writing for the most part in the house of her childhood, which was this former summer house, that castle that I'd mentioned, of the Prince Abbot of Muri. Burckhardt received many, many literary prizes, and to date she is still the only woman ever to have been awarded Switzerland's highest literary prize, the Große Schiller Prize, in 2005. And this one is called Walking at 2 o'clock in the Night. On the black ditch, the marshes rot, nightly flickering their will-o'-the-wisps that wake me from a dream made of disintegrating scraps of images. Now I'm awake all the way down to my roots. The trees are gray and the moon darkens. I see my mother dead of cancer, see my sister dead of cancer, their knobbed hands, a gaping mouth, the solitude around the resting place in the basement where they haul away what remains of noble people with language, gestures, hopes, struggles, tenderness. The voice chokes in fear. I turn on the light, stammer in my brain, a childhood prayer. Many of these poems, of course, were written toward the latter end of Erika's life. Yeah. This one's called Old Person in Her Parents' Home. The voices of the doors, their handles and locks, are familiar at a distance, knocking, creaking, and grating, the moaning as the temperature drops, like human lament, like animal suffering, the groan and whimper of the wood as it tries to submit to the swollen frame. Magical the number of stairs that one secures oneself from on paths travels in foreign homes and cities to get ground under one's feet, reminiscent of the light shadow on the 3rd step of the 3rd floor, mid-morning, at the beginning of March, and how in the middle of June the stairwell dimmed as the green bloom of the trees extinguished. The green hell grew around us with its shadows deep under the skin. He who hasn't met with the summer shivers doesn't know what freezing means. God only knows where you orient yourself within the house's topography, where you took your first steps, saw an image in every window, winter, autumn, summer landscapes, in October, fiery trees against distant cobalt that borders on eternity. One knows all these things, and propped on the banister goes astray at 80 in the labyrinth of one's own origins, one who came and went, who lived for art and love, who departed and who didn't return. So as you can see, she's struggling a bit with the latter half of her life. She always had a problematic life. Ernst was her second husband, I believe. But her father had been an adventurer in Brazil at the turn of the century, last century, hunting rare birds and the sorts. And he lived out there in Brazil and also in Argentina, and tried to make a life for himself. But of course, he got some sort of fever and was forced to go back to Switzerland and forced to run this tavern where Erika grew up. And it drove him absolutely insane. You know? So the household where Erika grew up had this kind of ominous shadow hanging over it. This poem's called Thousand Furs. Unstitching, tacking, fastening, losing the needle, the red thread snapped the blue long ago. I find oddments of old clothes, memory carriers, witnesses of suffering happiness too. Cut to size, measure up, adjust to fit, consider the patchwork in daylight. Mending is a metaphor. Has one lived too long? Once I wove wreaths of wildflowers for children and studded plastic crowns with glass jewels. There was a boy and I his girlfriend. Children accumulate time, not out of years. Children played mostly until 6, up in the old country, where no timepieces chop life up into the have you are permitted to, and being. I gave them the names of mountains, of birds and flowers, signposts to the creation lab, where 1,000 years are an instant. I must, having gotten older and old, attempt to cope with 1,000 stuff, search within sleep for hiding places and nooks, freeze, burn one day with hair and skin, while herein the mythical hope, the invisible one, is collected from the cryptic, smiling messenger, God with the winged shoes. So around their castle, there was this very diverse nature, from woodland to marshland to almost mountainous, and so all this reflects a lot in the poetry as well. This poem is called Ball Moss. In broad daylight, the 7 screech owls in the sparse piles of larch needles don't scatter but sleep, even though you grope in the high moor under a faded September sky. In these ink overflowing holes, one could sink, be sucked out of the light and submerged to the stumps and bones that didn't rot in the morass. You move over the Nunatak, here, buckling under a tribe of old Nordic plant children. The earth rose from the sallow ice shield. Even today, still nourishes mossberries, heather, club moss. Neither screech nor machine, silence, just listening alone to the basso ostinato of time, against which my evanescent, my tremulous heart ticks. Up in the mountains, this one's called Mountain Night. With sleepwalking eyes, the lamps upon the deserted white street stare from the high piles. Icy and voiceless, the mountain's breath and all the tunnels covered. Skirting steep forests are those who saw the lovers in the moon, imprint of a devalued coin, apart from the currency of its singular glimmer, and just over the ridge, Orion. Since I know of space, matter, energy, number, and time, its cold, encircling bodies, deadly suns, defleeced emptiness, of the blind spot, black holes. Since I know that I know nothing, I'm afraid of the stars, their conspicuous constellations that never refer to us. At the end of the village, a window flickers. And now, a very recent poem of my own, from a collection I'm working on that is about very small people. It's called In a Flower-Covered Grove. He walks the path between the warblers and the wrens, between that upsqueak kittiwake and the down-spurting rain. He presses out peculiar little kisses, takes in the earthen air, ruffles down his mignon tassels and all, then walks towards his chapel of lichen and moss, of the ink-eater and the ziggledy-zag. Above, mute objects of expression, the sky loom, the star thresher, the hopscotcher flicker in feigned appreciation. Here, among the weeds, in a hidden grove, the metaphor of a needle pointing north, or an eye reflecting unborn miles. The Niels stares skyward towards his purpose, the surface of the sky, concave and dark. Below, a puddle swirling in unborn smiles, a cave to be entered sideways. Watch for the freckle of gold, the falcons dancing, the martins whirring in a circle, that quaint expression that moves the canoe. Here we are, in the flame of the candle, in its very wick, turning the sky on its head, frankly proclaiming that loving brilliance. And here's his rusty horseshoe. If only his fingers would find all the stored years, the omens carried on the wind, minds at odds. If only the undertow of odors of trees, worries and quibbles might pour out into the sky, might evaporate and disperse into a billion motes across the flower-covered grove. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Donald, Mark, David. I'm just so touched that you read tonight, and really thank you so very much. And can we all give them another round of applause? So thank you. On Sunday,
Gloria, you muted yourself. Can you unmute?
whoops, that was an accident. I don't know how much you heard. Did you hear me thank the readers?
On Sunday, start with on Sunday again.
Yep.
Oh, so you didn't hear me thank the readers?
A little, yeah.
A little, oh, okay. Because I mean, you guys are important. I want to thank you. You did such a wonderful job tonight.
Oh, we did.
Okay, all right. I must have just did it by accident. But anyway, on the 23rd on Sunday, we have Helene Cardona, Sherry Dratfield, and Richard Hoffman at 7 o'clock. So I hope you will join us. And Donald, you probably know Richard because he was at Emerson too, and that. So anyway, so thank you so much, everybody, and hope to see you on Sunday.
Thanks, Gloria.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, everybody. Wonderful readings.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. It was
Bye.
great.